Today I just want to cover the topic of the commandments. And again, misconceptions we hear, or I hear constantly on the altar at church. I hear people making videos on YouTube like myself, I'm doing right now, where people say the law was nailed at the cross. They say that we're no longer under the law, but under grace. Is that so? Is that the real story? Is that what God says in the Bible? Can we find these statements in the Bible? Or can we only find it from the mouths of our pastors and priests? So today, I just want to take you to the Bible quickly and just help us understand it. Because, again, I want to reiterate, it is important what you believe, my friend. It is very important. So let's begin. Right here on my computer, I have a few texts that I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to put the slides online so you can see it on the video. Okay? So we begin. The commandments were first given to Moses for the Jews on Mount Sinai. Yes. Was the commandments given to the Jews only? It was given to Moses, but was it given to the Jews only or to all mankind? In Exodus 20, verse 1 to 7, we have the entire 10 commandments right there. And in Exodus 44, verse 28, we have evidence where God gave Moses the commandments. And he says, and he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. Also in Deuteronomy 10 and verse 4, we read, and he wrote on the tables according to the first writing, the 10 commandments which the Lord had spoken to you in the mountain, from the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly, and the Lord gave them to me. This is Moses speaking here. So here we have evidence that yes, God gave Moses the 10 commandments. My question, so was this the first time that the 10 commandments came into existence? When God gave Moses these 10 commandments, does that mean that the commandments were not in existence before this? Or can we find evidence from the Bible that the commandments have always been in existence way before the children of Israel in the wilderness? Okay, we read from John 8 verse 44, where Jesus was speaking to these Pharisees, hypocritical Pharisees, okay, and where he says, you are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. In 2 Peter 2 verse 4 we read, for if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into the chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. So we see that the angels sinned in heaven. So if the angels sinned, what is sin? From the Bible, from 1 John 3 verse 4, the clearest definition of sin, we read, whoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. That's from the King James Version. From the New King James, it says, whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness. For sin is lawlessness. So here we have what is the definition of sin. Okay? So, if the devil and the angels sinned and God cast them out of heaven, which law could they have broken to sin? Because in order to sin, you have to break a law. Because sin is a transgression of the law, right? So, let's see. In Isaiah 14 verse 12 to 14, we read what was the sin of Lucifer, who is today known as the devil, the dragon. In verse 12 it says, how you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How are you cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. So here we have it. Here we have what was Lucifer's sin, what he did which broke God's law. Number one, from face value, we can see he broke commandment number one. He was having other gods. How? Because he tried to make himself God. So he broke commandment number one by having another God before Jehovah God. He also broke commandment number 10. He was very covetous. He was jealous. He was envious of God. His statement is, I will be like the Most High. I will stand on the mount of the congregation. He was trying to take what God have. He was jealous of God. So he broke commandment number 10. Jesus says in John 8 verse 44, Jesus says he was a murderer from the beginning. Here, he broke commandment number 6. He was a murderer. Jesus also says he was a liar from the beginning. Here, he's breaking commandment number 9. So we see that even before Adam and Eve sinned, before the children of Israel in the wilderness, the devil had already broken 4, just from face value, 4 of the commandments that we have today, which is the 10 Commandments. So, are we getting warmer? Are we seeing that probably, most likely, the commandments were already in existence before the children of Israel, before God gave it to Moses? Let's look further. In Genesis 3, verse 1 to 6, Adam and Eve sinned by disobeying God. Cain killed his brother Abel. When he killed Abel, he ran away. Why did he run away? Because he knew he sinned. How did he know he sinned? Because there must have been a law which says, thou shalt not kill. Okay? And we can find this in Genesis 4 verse 8. God caused a worldwide flood because of the prevalence of sin. Again, I say worldwide. There's a misconception. People say it was a local flood, but the Bible says it was a worldwide flood. The whole earth was filled with water. Okay? And in Genesis 6 verse 5 we read, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So because of the prevalence of evil, God had to send a flood to cleanse the earth. So here, we have these people are breaking the law. Okay? In Genesis 6, verse 4 to 5, here is a clear definition. It says, God is speaking. He says, I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give to your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. This means that the law existed before the children of Israel in the wilderness. Their father was Abraham. Hundreds of years before they were in the wilderness, because they were in slavery for 400 years in Egypt. And before this, Abraham, who is their father, he was keeping the commandments of God. He was keeping God's law, which means that the 10 commandments we have today, it was already in existence before the children of Israel in the wilderness, before God gave it to Moses on the mountain. So, when God gave the commandments to Moses, if we watch carefully, if we look at commandment number 4, it says, remember the 7th day to keep it holy, the Sabbath day. You can't remember something which is new. God says remember because evidently, from common sense, because the Bible has a lot of common sense also, God didn't make it a book of puzzling myths. Common sense tells us you can remember something which has been told to you before, and you forgot. So here God reminded them, remember the Sabbath day, remember all my commandments. I'm just giving it to you. And because they were in Egypt for 400 years, they had forgotten God's law. So God had to remind his children of his law. That's why he gave it to Moses on the mountain. But from the Bible, it existed before this time. And we have other evidence from the Bible which proves this. And we're going to find it right now, here on my computer. So, you might say, but my pastor says that Jesus taught only 2 commandments. Love God and thy neighbor. People say, Protestant churches say, the Catholic Church says, the commandments were nailed at the cross. When Jesus died, he nailed the commandments at the cross. Can that be possible? Remember, the commandments were in existence before man was created. So when Jesus died, the commandments were in existence before sin. So when Jesus died, does that mean that Jesus abolished the commandments? We no longer have a law in heaven, to govern the universe? Let's find out. What does the Bible say? If we go to Matthew 22, verse 37 to 40, we can go to Matthew. It says, Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the great commandment. Verse 49 says, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 40, which is the very important verse, it says, on these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Does this statement mean that God abolished the commandments? Does this mean that God nailed the commandments to the cross and he replaced it with only 2 commandments, love your neighbor and yourself? If we look at God's commandments, we see commandment number 1 to commandment number 4. It says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thyself any graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. If you watch these 4 commandments, they're all centered around one being. And who is that? This being is God. So we see right here that these 4 first commandments, the first 4 commandments, they're all centered on God and on love for God. If we watch the next 6 commandments, it says, honor thy father and your mother. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness, which is do not lie. Whether it's a white lie, a blue lie, a purple lie, do not lie. And the last one says, thou shalt not covet. All these commandments are centered on your neighbor, centered on how we treat each other individuals. So this is what Jesus meant when he says, on these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. If you watch carefully, they're centered around 2 things, on love for God and love for your fellow men. But it never said anywhere in the Bible that God abolished his 10 commandments and replaced it with 2. It does not make any sense. Okay? So I have something else. Jesus also made it clear that he did not come to abolish his law. In spite of that, many people still say he abolished it, but Jesus made it clear because he knew today we would have said that. In Matthew 5 verse 17, he says, do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For surely I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot, one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So here God is actually pronouncing a judgment on people who says and who encourages others to break God's law. And that's what we are doing today, my friends. We are saying that God has abolished his law. When in the Bible, God says he pronounces a judgment on those who says that. And he pronounces a blessing on those who keeps his law. And he says, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. They shall be great in the kingdom of heaven. Some people say, well, the word fulfill here means destroyed. Is that so? When I fulfill my homework, does that mean that I destroyed my homework? If a prophecy is fulfilled, does that mean that the prophecy is destroyed? Does it make any sense? Okay, since people say that fulfill here means destroy, let's actually paraphrase this. Everywhere we see the word fulfill, we're going to change it with the word destroy. Okay? So let's read again Matthew 5 verse 17 and replace fulfill with destroyed. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to destroy. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass away from the law till all is destroyed. Verse 19, I'm paraphrasing here. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments which I have destroyed, and teaches men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches these laws that I have destroyed, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. How confusing is this? How confusing. Just replacing the word fulfill with destroy, the text makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I have one thing. God has something in the Bible for us. He says in 1 Corinthians 14 verse 33, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. God does not deal with confusion. This text is very confusing if you have to replace fulfilled with destroyed, and it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And God is a God who makes much sense. To create such a beautiful universe, to create the earth, to create all the animals and the plants and the trees, he must be a God of sense, not a God of nonsense. Okay, in Titus 1 verse 14, Paul warned us. He says, do not give heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men who turn from the truth. So when your pastor or your priest tells you that the law has been abolished, it was nailed to the cross, they're not speaking the truth. These are the commandments of men, my friends. Matthew 15 verse 9, it says, Jesus said here, in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Again, teaching that the law is abolished. This is not God's commandments. This is not in his Bible. This is man's commandments. I serve God and not man. Who do you serve? John 5 verse 39, Jesus told us, you search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and these are they which testify of me. So in the scriptures we will find truth. But if we want to find truth by listening to our pastors, then we're only listening and obeying the commandments and the doctrines of men. Malachi 3 verse 6, it says, it says, for I am the Lord and I do not change. So why would God change his law when he says in Malachi that he does not change? In Hebrews 14 verse 8, he says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This is one I love. It's beautiful. Psalms 111 verse 7 to 8. It says, the works of his hands are verity and judgment. All his commandments are sure. They stand fast forever and ever, and are done in truth and uprightness. Plain and simple. David Harris saying that the commandments will last forever and ever. And it makes absolutely sense. It makes sense because from what we've read, we know that the commandments were in existence before Lucifer sinned. Because when he sinned, he must have broken a law. And when we read earlier, we realized that he had already broken 4 laws from the beginning. Most likely he broke all, but from face value, he had already broken 4 laws, which are the same 10 commandments we have today. Adam and Eve sinned. How did they sin? Because they broke a law. Cain sinned because he broke a law. Abraham obeyed God's laws. So therefore God says, I'll make you a great nation. Which laws were Abraham keeping? Abraham was keeping the same 10 commandments which Adam and Eve kept, which Cain broke, which Lucifer broke. The same 10 commandments we have today. The Bible is clean, my friends. The law is still valid. It is still alive and well. God never abolished his law at the cross. Okay? Never. God has never said that in the Bible. You cannot find this anywhere. Anywhere in the Bible. I have something else here. Why would Jesus tell us to do all these things, right? If you know he's about to abolish his law. In John 14 verse 15, Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Why would God tell us keep his commandments if he knew he would have abolished his commandments? Or he would have nailed it to the cross. In Matthew 19 verse 17, it says, if you want to enter life, keep the commandments. Again, why keep something which is abolished? Jesus is all-knowing. Okay? He knows what's going to happen 1,000,000 years from now, 1,000 years from now. Why would he tell us keep a law which he would have abolished? Is Jesus crazy? I don't think so. I don't think so. In Ecclesiastes 12 verse 14, I love this text. It says, let us have the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his judgments, for this is the whole duty of man. Our duty is to keep God's commandments. Keeping God's commandments is our duty. Why would God abolish something? And he says there are so many texts in the Bible to support it in favor of keeping the commandments. Let's read the Bible, my friends, and not what our pastors and our churches say. It's not on church doctrine, but on Bible truth. In Revelation 22, verse 14 to 15, it says, blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. But outside are dogs and sorcerers and sexual, immoral and murderers and idolaters and whoever loves and practices a lie. Again, Jesus said those who keep his commandments, they will have right to the tree of life. How could I keep something which has been abolished? Think about it. God is not crazy. He is not the author of confusion. The commandments are still as valid today as they were in Old Testament times, in the time of the Israelites. And it also existed, again, I want to reiterate, before the Israelites, before Adam and Eve, before Lucifer sinned. It has always been there, according to the Bible. It stands fast forever and ever. There's one thing that our churches don't teach us, and I really think if we understand it, we'll have a better understanding of God's 10 Commandments. And what is this thing I'm talking about? It's actually in the Old Testament, and we no longer preach about it in our churches. Protestant churches, Catholic churches do not preach about this. And because of this, we have the misunderstanding about God's commandments. And if we understand it, we're going to know that God's commandments are sure and they stand fast forever. This thing I'm talking about is the sanctuary. The sanctuary. So we're going to look at the sanctuary and the 10 Commandments quickly in support of the fact that the commandments have not been abolished. Psalm 77 verse 13, David says, Yahweh, O God, is in the sanctuary. Exodus 25 verse 8, it shows us that worship was based around the sanctuary. So from this text and from the Bible, we realize that the sanctuary is the place where salvation occurs. It was a very important part of the life of the Israelites, and it's a very important part of ours. And I'm going to say this statement, and I'm not being crazy, and I'll support it with Bible texts. When I say, without the sanctuary, we have no salvation. Again, without the sanctuary, we have no salvation. Let me explain and let you understand what it means. In Exodus 25, verse 1 to 40, God was speaking to Moses, and God told Moses, hey, I'm going to give you a blueprint of the pattern of the sanctuary in heaven, and you build it. And in verse 40, we read, and see to it that you make them according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain. What pattern is this? A blueprint of what? Where is the original if this is a pattern? And we get this in Revelation 11 verse 19, where John actually saw the original in heaven. When he says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. Okay? So here we see that the earthly sanctuary was a pattern of the heavenly sanctuary. So, the same sanctuary that we have on earth today, well, not today, we had on earth in the times of the Old Testament, there was an exact replica, but the real one in heaven. The real one in heaven. And in this, it contains the Ark of the Covenant, okay, which contains God's law. And I will explain it to you in a while. You see, in Hebrews 8 verse 1 to 2, Paul supports this when he says, we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord erected and not man. Paul is making it clear that there is the true sanctuary in heaven, and the one on earth was a replica of the one which is in heaven. Exodus 25 verse 16. I told you earlier that the law. So looking at the 10 Commandments, where were the 10 Commandments? In the ark on earth, the 10 Commandments were in the sanctuary on earth, the 10 Commandments were in the ark. And in Exodus 20 verse 16 we read, and you shall put it into the ark, the testament which I will give you. In Exodus 25 verse 21 to 22, we read, and you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. So we see that God says, okay, here is the mercy seat. The mercy seat will be a covering for the ark. And inside of the ark, I want you to place the 10 Commandments in the ark. And there are other Bible texts to let us see. In 1 Kings 8 verse 1 to 9, we're looking at verse 9 alone. It says, nothing was in the ark except the 2 tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. So in the ark contained nothing but the 10 Commandments. Why would the 10 Commandments, something which would be abolished, be the central figure in the whole sanctuary? Okay? And also we read in the Bible at later stages there were other things which were added. For example, the pot of manna and Aaron's rod which budded, they were added also into the ark, with the authority of God, of course. Okay? In Hebrews 9 verse 4 it says, "And the ark of the covenant overlaid on all sides with gold, in which were the golden pot that had the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant, which is the Ten Commandments." It was in the ark. Okay? And Exodus 40 verse 20, I don't know if I've read that, but I'm going to read it again. "He took the testimony and put it into the ark, inserted the poles through the rings of the ark, and put the mercy seat on top of the ark." So let me give you a clear picture of what it was. So here we have the ark of the covenant. It was a box, almost like a chest. Inside of it were the 10 commandments. At first it was the 10 commandments alone. Later we added the golden pot and Aaron's rod that budded. Okay? And on top of this ark was laid, what was laid on top of the ark? On top of the ark we had the mercy seat. And the mercy seat, on the mercy seat were two cherubims with their wings joined together. And God says that he would have met with the priests and give them instruction for the children above the mercy seat. And he said this in Exodus 22 verse 25 verse 22. It says, "And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel." So God's direct presence was actually above the mercy seat, between the two angels. Now let me help you understand how important it was. In the temple, in the sanctuary, there were two areas. And we're going to have to do another video on this. One was called the holy place, and the priests went in there daily to do the daily sacrifices for the people as they confessed their sins. And there was the most holy place. Now the most holy place, the priest could have entered there only once a year. And on that day, it was called the Day of Atonement. And if the priest entered in that place with any sin, unconfessed sin in his life, in his heart, he would have fallen and died right away. This was how holy this place was. So you do see how holy it was. And imagine the direct presence of God is in there. And guess what is and God's presence is above the mercy seat. And guess what is below the mercy seat? The 10 Commandments. The same 10 Commandments which our pastors say has been abolished, which the priests say has been abolished, which we say have been abolished. Does that make any sense? Now keep in mind that the earthly sanctuary was a replica of the one in heaven. So let's think about it. In heaven, there is the real sanctuary. And in heaven, Paul helps us understand Jesus is the priest. And the angels in heaven, we have the archangels. And in Daniel, we read where Gabriel says he is one of the archangels. The other archangel, the Bible didn't let us know who was the other archangel. Okay? And let me show you how powerful Gabriel is. We know Jesus is Lord and Jesus is God. He is the Savior. So we know Jesus is all-powerful. Let me tell you how powerful Gabriel is. When Jesus died, on the Sunday morning when the angels came, the angel which rolled away the stone was Gabriel. He was the one who called Jesus out of the grave. The Bible says when he landed on earth, that an earthquake happened. He only touched the earth and an earthquake happened. This is how powerful this angel is. And we have another angel who is probably just as powerful as him. And then we have God. His direct presence is in the sanctuary in heaven. He's in the sanctuary. He's actually there between the two angels above the mercy seat. Because again, I want to help you reiterate and help you understand that the sanctuary on earth was a replica of the one which is in heaven. Now, help me understand this, someone. We say that the law has been abolished. And Protestant churches say, well, we go to church, and I got a good example. We go to church on Sundays. God says, remember the Sabbath day in his commandments. The Sabbath day is the seventh day, which is Saturday. We go to church on Sunday. We say, well, Sunday became the Sabbath day when Jesus arose from the grave. Can that be proven from Scripture? It cannot. Can it be proven from, did Jesus tell his disciples he would have changed the Sabbath day? He did not. And then we say, we change it. And the Catholic Church, the priests themselves, the church say, we change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. Now help me understand. Which prelate, which priest, which pope, which bishop had enough power to go to heaven, push Jesus out of the way, go between the two angels, push God's presence or push God away from the top of the Ark of the Covenant in heaven, and change the commandments and abolish the commandments. Which being in the universe can actually do this? None. Jesus himself said in the whole Bible, his law has been there forever. It's going to be there forever. Jesus said he did not come to destroy it, but to fulfill it, which means to keep it, to make it whole. Because evidently, the Pharisees had already messed it up. Even if you watch the way they were keeping the Sabbath, causing so much pain and so many laws and rules on the Sabbath, it was not even a pleasure to worship on the Sabbath again. Jesus came to fix this and to let them know this is how we should really keep the law. So we see, my friends, we understanding the sanctuary helps us understand the importance of the Ten Commandments. If we understand these things and we read the Bible and we're really searching for truth, we'll know that the commandments has never been abolished, nor they will ever be abolished. Because we can only know sin if there is a law. Without no law, there is no sin. Today we have sin, which means that there must be a law. And every government is run by laws. God cannot run the universe without no laws. There's a laws of physics which controls the way the planets move. There are all types of laws. And we have laws on earth today to control society. So are you going to tell me that God, the most powerful being, the most organized, he has no laws? Does it make any sense? The Bible is a book of sense. You have to use our common sense. We have to read and find truth and search for truth, my friends. And I have the last one here. Again, I want to reiterate the point. Psalms 111 verse 7 to David says of the commandments, the work of his hands are verity and judgment. All his commandments are sure. They stand fast forever and ever and are done in truth and uprightness. They stand fast forever and ever. These are the commandments. My friends, God's commandments has not been abolished. It is still as valid for us today as it was in the time of the Israelites. It existed before Moses. It existed before Abraham. It existed before Cain, before Adam and Eve. It existed before Lucifer. As long as God has been there, his laws have always been there, because God uses his laws to control the universe. And my friends, keep in mind, again, God's law has not been abolished. So next time your priest or your pastor tells you that the laws were nailed to the cross, ask them about the sanctuary. Ask them who went to heaven to change the original laws in heaven, who was able to move God off the Ark of the Covenant, go between the angels in heaven, pass through Jesus, pass through the Holy Spirit, and go change the laws. Jesus said he wouldn't change his laws, and his laws are still valid. So please find the truth. Please search truth, because your beliefs determine your soul salvation. Your beliefs determine whether you'll be saved or whether you'll be lost. Because our beliefs determine our actions. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.